Hello, Ibérica. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you, Daniel.
I we've been in dialogue and in conversation over the past several weeks, and it's been so fascinating to hear about your experiences and
hmm
also to share about mine and kind of compare notes. Um,
hmm
for those who don't know, Ibérica is part of my friend circle here in New Orleans, or used to be
Yeah.
while she was
Yes.
living here. And I was how we kind of got in touch around the subject of awakening and these experiences of really coming in touch with the ground of being, or whatever it is that that opens up uh to us when we're really in tune with, yeah, either a mystical or an enlightened experience, whatever you want to call it. I was talking to a friend of mine about what I'd gone through, and he said, "Well, that sounds a lot like what uh, my friend Iberica went through. Like maybe you should get in touch." And and so we did, and we've been, yeah, just talking ever since. So, Iberica, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit as well, and um, a little bit about what it is that, if you feel like sharing what it is that you experienced and went through.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Ibérica, and like Daniel was saying, we have some friends in common back from, well, for me, it's back in New Orleans. I no longer live there, but that's where I had my spiritual awakening, and which is how this friend that we have in common knows about it because it was like a part, he was a witness to I guess to both of ours, right? Um, and yeah, I mean, that was back in 2019. It was when it got intensified. But it's honestly changed me and shaped me ever since. And I have never been the same person ever since, for the better, I want to say. And yeah, like some of the things that happened back then were like mystical experiences, a sense of joining with the oneness and understanding life from a perspective that's not just your own human experience, in a way that feels like it shatters your mind. It shatters all the beliefs that at least I previously held because I was not, nobody prepared me for this. I didn't believe that any of this was possible or real. It was very like skeptical and very like down to earth, as we call it back then. But yeah, because it happened to me in like a very, it was like a very inner journey, and it was so experiential. And for me particularly, well, there was experiences with plant medicine. They were very few. Most of it happened without any substance, external substance that was like catalyzing it. It was just very, very natural. It's something I cannot deny, right? So now my perspective in the world, it's completely changed. Although I do feel like now, even though I feel like I know more than I used to, it's almost like it's just revealing how little I actually know. So it
Mm.
makes me more humbled and more open to life experiences and being blown away by things I don't know yet.
Yeah, and that's something that that feeling of humbleness and humility that comes. It's interesting because in the throes of the experience, you feel like you're in touch with, the all, and you feel like this clarity to the world,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see so much more than you could before. And and there's this, at least for me, there was this kind of rush of just like almost like, oh, now I know things. Now I know, I don't know if I ever thought, and now I know everything, but it definitely felt like this huge like widening of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Um and it, but after a few weeks and few months, there came a point for me where I realized, oh, this is really just the beginning of my journey. And and I remember coming to a place of realization of, I'm talking as if I'm an expert in this, but really I need to be, I need to think about this as a student, as a student of the world, because I just had this feeling of there's really so much I don't understand about what's going on with
Mhm.
me or just with the world.
Yeah. Or even with what reality is, right? I feel like the scope of what reality is for us does expand, and there is a point where you almost feel like you get it, but then you come back down to this realm, into your body, into a more grounded daily experience. And at least for me particularly, I feel like I lose so much of that knowledge that sometimes feels like I get it in like these peak moments, right? There is so much. I mean, there were moments where I felt so wise and so knowledgeable, and a lot of it I lost it, quote unquote, right? Maybe it's it's sprinkled here and there, and maybe it comes up and sometimes, but I don't feel like there's moments where I feel like a sage, or like I knew so much, and sometimes it lasted for minutes only, or for days or hours, but it's not all retained within me. And honestly, it's probably for the better, because then I would be a completely different person than I am, and I feel like who I actually am, it's the journey that I'm meant to actually live. And it is not a journey of being a holy sage all the time, although I do think that there's some wisdom in me. But even in the not knowing, it's almost like part of what I'm supposed to live. You know what I mean? And it's all right if I don't know everything. Even if I at points have had access to knowing so much more than, and I just didn't retain it. You know what I mean? So it's almost like that loss of knowledge doesn't feel hurtful or painful to me anymore. It doesn't. I feel at peace with knowing that I don't have to know it all at all times.
Yeah, and that's kind of the beautiful thing. And I think what a real to me like integration of this kind of experience is the knowing that it's all right, you know,
Hmm.
that you don't walk through the streets spouting knowledge and wisdom everywhere, and that's all right. Like we live in this human body, and then we'll get sick and die one day, and that's all right.
Yes. And like you have to pay the bills and like do chores and just be very mundane and boring sometimes, and that's also fine. Yeah, like you can have all of it, right? Like the super extreme experiences that I believe very few of us get to experience in any one lifetime or generational period, which are amazing. They really are incredible. To many, it's actually incredible. Like to most people, it'll be like, no, you're full of shit. You did not live that, right? But you get to kind of have that, and it's so magical and like expansive, and it blows your mind. And then you kind of go back to just everyday life and like boring stuff at the same time, right? And but I feel like one helps the other, like living those high moments, but not all the time. Kind of like that give you like a filter that you almost appreciate the mundane things and realize that too, like the magic is everywhere, right? Even in the
Mm,
mundane, even in the little things. There's something that's stick with you that you carry it through it all. I feel.
mm.
Um, yeah. So that's why it's like there's peace in every moment. Yeah, I wouldn't want to feel that high forever. Like 2019 was a year where I was constantly in those states, in those different altered states of consciousness, and it was exhausting.
Mm.
It was very erratic. It was very, I mean, at moments they were borderline dangerous, even for my own safety. Thankfully, I was blessed to have friends around me that took care of me, including the one friend that we have in common. But it is not a state I would want to be forever, or even most of the time at all.
Yeah, I remember speaking with Saeed Khan on my YouTube channel, and he was saying that in India, for example, like there are certain sages that they're just in that state all the time, but they
Right.
don't function. Like in society,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of sit in a place, people come and they give them alms, and they like, there's no functioning capacity like a person that has a maybe a more intact ego, when the
Mm-hmm.
ego is really so blown open that all we see is the reality of all reality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what can you do with that? You're just in awe and wonder, and so it's almost like a, we thank you to our egos, to our narrow,
Yeah.
what narrowness that our ego provides into our perceptions, that allows us to live in this human body and this human life, and to experience the human experience. um
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we would just be, I guess, I don't know, piece of stardust, like just existing, but not, we
Mm-hmm.
couldn't live in this body.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I mean, maybe for some of those people, there is a function to their ego being almost shattered the whole time. Maybe they do uh choose an incarnation where they live that way here on the earthly plane for a reason, to be an anchor to those energies or something. I don't know. I'm just making things up right now. But I do feel there is a function for all different kinds of personalities and life streams, right? And but that I constantly do the question where how what was my real path and purpose for this, and it was never about being neither a sage or even like being a professional spiritual person per se, like that ended up not being my path so far. And I question that a lot because it's like, oh my god, like I'm living this very extreme spiritual experiences. I'm getting so much knowledge that maybe other people could use. Maybe I should be a coach, or especially because it's a little bit common now. Not common, but like it's like a trend that a lot of people have become, or a shaman, or all these different things are more acceptable now. But for me personally, it was not my path. So the ego that is now more integrated is precisely serves the purpose of the path that I'm actually meant to live.
Mm.
And I guess that's kind of where our last conversation started to take shape in some ways about the refinement of character that happens, right? Of the ego so that it serves the soul, as we want to refer it, right? So, and then my ego as it is, definitely exactly how it's meant to be, to serve the soul. And it's not the ego of a sage, of a holy person, of illuminated person or something. It's very flawed, it's very human, but it's perfect too, right? And I love her so much.
Yeah,
Me,
yeah, that,
love me so much.
right, that seeing the flawedness of our nature, of your particular personality, body, everything, and see like, okay, and that too is perfect.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's so liberating, because you can't miss, you can't get it wrong. How you are now is that's perfection right there.
Right. And I feel like that's how actually God, the oneness, source, or whatever, that bigger part, that the bigger thing that we're a part of, I feel like that's how it really sees us, honestly, all the time.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
as just perfect as we are. I believe that. I really do.
yeah, and I see it in a similar way, and you know I don't necessarily look at the world as kind of like, incarnations of our souls coming or choosing consciously. I see it kind of as
Hmm.
an emerging from the ground of being in a kind of spontaneous and natural way, where there
Hmm.
isn't so much intent and planning, but just like spontaneous birthing. Um,
Wow.
but it's like, now I'm forgetting what I was gonna say after that. Anyway.
there's a whole other conversation about incarnations and past lives and soul purposes and things like that. I don't know the answer to that either. But yeah, but still, I'm here.
Yeah. And I wonder about all that. I it's, part of me is skeptical about that. Or, I don't, or at least agnostic. I don't know. I've never seen anything that really made me feel like, oh yeah, that's definitely exists. But I also don't know that it definitely doesn't exist.
Hmm.
I guess I see what I see around me, and this itself is a miracle, is miraculous, and is like, you know so I don't know about the past lives and all that, but I guess I don't, for me personally, I don't need to know or have that to
Right.
exist to experience all of the wonder that my awakening experience showed me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know either. It's a concept that I like to believe in general. It makes some kind of sense to me to explain certain things to my own self, but it's not one that I'm like dogmatic about because I don't know for sure. And it's that's to a point it's irrelevant, right? Because at the end of the day, this is the one life that I need to focus on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's right. I feel the same that, at a certain point, like talking about the metaphysics of what is out there beyond what we can know, it's it doesn't really matter. What matters is, I think, as you were saying, the service. Like, what is in front of us now? How is our ego serving our soul? How is, and how are we aligning those two so that we can serve our family, our community, our world, our particular era, um,
Hmm.
in a way that, that feels in line with what is true and what is loving and what is, yeah.
So how did you answer? How are you answering those questions to yourself for
That's a good
yourself?
question. Um, I mean, for me, it's, I think, looking back at my life, I see the kind of arc of this. But for me,
Hmm.
a big part of what I have in me is the mark of a healer, and that's the path that I'm following. Starting with, the kind of coaching work that I started a few years ago, now in, doing a lot more spiritual guidance, and just, I'm going to grad school for counseling this fall, so getting a real, kind of nuts and bolts, understanding of what the field of psychology is like right now, and trying to bridge the gap between psychology and spirituality, so that
Hmm.
they can have a greater, uh yeah, just we have a greater understanding of how those two fields work together, so that, you know um just more people can be healed. I think
Oh,
that's
I love
that's
that.
that's what I'm doing.
How did you find out that that was your path? Like, and I say that because for me, it wasn't a straight for my own path. To this day, I still question it. Like, is this really it? Because it hasn't been a straight forward journey. To get to the point where I feel grounded in what I am quote unquote supposed to do in this incarnation or lifetime or whatever. What I feel is in alignment with my soul.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how it was for you because I remember when we met, you were more in your career was more inclined towards writing, right? And you are very talented at that, and you enjoyed it at the time, right? So I also had obviously changes, like I just mentioned. So how did you transition from that to like this, which you are very much committed to as well? And it seems like you're very grounded in your decision and your inner knowing that this is what you want to do and what serves your soul and serves others.
Yeah. I mean, from the outside, it may look like a big shift from writing and to the kind of healing and help work that I'm doing now. But to me, it was kind of an obvious transition. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it was kind of, it wasn't linear. It wasn't a straight line. But the
Mm-hmm.
main thing that I realized was the thing that I was trying to do through writing was to touch people's souls and to hopefully change them in some way, to open them up both internally as well as to, with their connection to the world, and to be able to touch some kind of sacred ground that lies behind all things. And I just realized that I was kind of using, maybe, well, for me, using the wrong medium. I was using the medium of writing, when I realized that actually the thing that would feed me and feed just my whole being is interpersonal interaction. Doing that through one-on-one or through group or through talks like this, that for me fed me. And I could sense that the writing was draining me. And so that was
Wow.
the switch. I fundamentally have been doing the same thing, but realized that the medium that I was doing it in wasn't ideal, and so I switched mediums.
Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense. Yeah. And I'm guessing that writing did serve a purpose for that time. It's not like you were always drained by it. It was literally a change of like, this is how I no longer feel fulfilled by doing it in this way, and I'm meant and called to do it in this other way, right? But
Yeah.
essentially, like you said, you're doing with the same intent at the end of the day. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's very beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about you? Because you've been talking about your path a little bit abstractly, but I'm curious about that.
I feel like I'm still putting it together and giving a shape. And yeah, and it's an exciting journey, but for the most part, it has always had something to do with businesses and entrepreneurship and just the currency that is money and the power that this currency has in the world, right? And it holds, or that we give it, right? Um, I mean, I have been interested in businesses from a very young age. Literally, as a kid, I had like this little businesses that selling candy and things of that nature. And some of the healing journey that I have been called to do, and I have gone very deep with it, are related to money, to the energy of money, and how it has been used to perpetuate a lot of trauma and control and controlling of peoples, right? Around millennial. So a big part of the work that I've done internally, it's around healing the financial traumas, not only of my own life, but ancestral. And as you can
Mm.
probably tell, I'm a Black woman. So uh, from the beginning of my spiritual awakening, even before I will call it an awakening, before I started having all these like, bigger experiences, but from the beginning of my healing journey, I started healing things of the slavery traumas that were held in my DNA by my ancestors, right? Which is very, very, very much connected to capitalism, I guess how it was at the time, to colonialism, and honestly to seeing other human beings as means of production, using them to extract some kind of financial benefit out of them, and in the most horrible ways possible. So yeah, it's like then that was several years ago when, well, let's see, I'm gonna turn 35. So I was 5 years old when that all started like coming up. And it hasn't left me since. Like I'm still doing a lot of financial trauma healing work. And at the same time, the calling, I guess, that I would call, I would say it is for me, is in relation to the empowerment of the people that have been disenfranchised and disempowered by the capitalistic colonial systems that have been in power for several centuries now here on Earth. However, there like you said, but you didn't say that. I was relating it to it. A lot of that, I think a lot of what awakens within us is our sense of multidimensionality, right? So we stop seeing ourselves as like, oh, I gotta do this one thing and do it in this one way because that's what works and that's what society has told me to work. We start seeing like how different gifts and different things that we have an interest in come together, in its own unique way, and it becomes our offering and the things that we create, right, for the world. So for me, even though what I just mentioned, it sounds heavy and all very masculine, money and colonialism and trauma and financial trauma, there is this other dimension that is very feminine that is a big part of how this gets to come to the world through me, which is beauty.
Mm.
So the quality of beauty or of beauty of things that are made by hand, uh, of just the cultural relevancy of beauty, it's also gets to play with what I just mentioned.
Mm.
So how this comes together is that a lot of my work, and I already started last year, but it's gonna take more form and take more power, more shape through the rest of my life, I believe. It's focused on uh people, and more importantly women, because this is a work that mainly women do, that are have dedicated themselves to preserving the crafts and the artistic techniques and heritage of their culture, the indigenous cultures which they are a part of.
Mm.
So specifically artisans,
Mm.
or artists that have been the ones who have carried their cultures through their art, right? Especially art that you can perceive in like uh, um, that you can sense with your five senses. So
Mm.
anything from, things that pieces of art that you can see and like it stimulates your vision, for example, to things that are functional that you use in your life or that you touch, or things that you eat and drink and taste. So like that's where the fun, lighthearted, beautiful part of my calling comes in, and the creative part, and it joins with this other place, which is that a lot of the majority of the artisans in the world, especially of the global south, and the majority of them are indigenous people whose art and artistic craft have actually been devalued financially and economically for now several years. And colonialism has had a lot to play with that, as well as capitalism.
Mm.
So there is a whole movement of rescuing and giving that sector the importance that it honestly has, um, and realizing that focusing on those type of means of production, it's part of how we're gonna heal the legacy of industrialization and overconsumption and overproduction that has
Mm.
come from this new wave of how we produce things right now due to capitalism. So it's like a
No,
lot. Like I'm still putting
yeah,
it together,
yeah. No, I hear it. I hear
but
it.
it's all connected though. It's so connected now that I feel
And
like
that
I
and
embody
that's
that connection
exactly
somehow.
yeah, and that's exactly what I was feeling and noticing as you were talking about it. You know, I I think like you heard and noticed in my path, there's a kind of groundedness
Mhm.
that I see in yours, where it's like, oh, this isn't just like, oh, some kind of project that, you're gonna do for a few years and then kind of like, go do something else. This sounds like it's entwined with your being. This
Yeah, it is.
incarnation of you, of the universe in this package that is Iberica. um, you have these ancestries, these pains, this understanding, and this passion that you are bringing together in this very unique way. And I think that that is what makes for a, you know a life that we look to, and it's like, wow, that this person is like, like making an impact. They're known in their field. They've found their purpose or their calling. And it's like, it's not a shallow thing. It is down deep in the roots of an individual's being.
Thank you for that reflection. Yeah, I need to still craft my 15-second, my elevator pitch for all of this, but because I feel like I'm in the middle of putting it together within me. You know what I mean? How these things connect and how they create something new through me, that until I find the not the perfect, but like the perfect way in which they get shaped in my mind, then it's gonna be easier for me to like be able to communicate it, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess my path, if I can put it in a simple, this is what I'm working on type of words. My one of my first creations through this path is a pet accessories brand that I'm creating in cooperation in partnership with artisans from Chiapas specifically.
Hmm.
But this is just one iteration of what's coming, and it's one that is actually serving the purpose of shaping my character, of unwrapping some gifts that I need to hone, um, of also learning so much about the sector of artisans. This time with artisans from Chiapas, but this is like a microcosm of something bigger. Of understanding the dynamics between the commercialization of products between, let's say, designers like me and the artisans, and how these connections that we have together, what still needs to be worked through, what are their needs, what are my needs. So like just playing out all the different dynamics that happen in this global trade that has always existed, but that it's very much wounded by capitalism, by industrialization, by colonialism.
Hmm.
Just seeing what still there needs to happen, through me creating a business in the middle of it, me honing my values and also honing the framework and the lexicon that I need to learn in order to communicate what the needs are, and call in the people that are also called to participate. You know what I mean? And communicate
Yeah.
it better. So I'm creating this like first project, if you will, that's like my incubator.
Is there a name to it? Is there something that people
Yeah,
can search to find it?
it's called Hey Cyrus.
What?
HeyCyrus.com, and I'm
Hey
actually
Cyrus. HeyCyrus.com.
yes, and I'm currently running a crowdfunding campaign to collect the funds to be able to bring it to market and create the first product, the first line. Um, and every step of that journey is something that is teaching me something about myself, and it's also showing me my blind spots,
Hmm.
so that I can work on them and allow spirit to shape me and to refine me. Because the bigger vision that I received, and this just happened during a retreat that I did a year ago, it's so much bigger that it really requires a different version of me. It
Hmm.
requires like me in a greater potential. You know what I mean? So I'm just
Mhm.
kind of like, this is my little school. Like, Hey Cyrus is like my school, my incubator.
I
Um,
know what you mean. I know what you mean. I feel like I'm in the same place. I've like
oh,
evolved a little bit, but I'm like, I've got I'm like a Pokemon, like somewhere in like
right.
I know what I'm supposed to become, but I'm like still only
Right,
part
right.
way there.
So
Um,
so yeah, the bigger vision is so big, so big, so big. That I won't even talk about it right now, because it's right now I'm just, like
right,
I
right.
said,
I know. It's
refining my own character. But when the time comes, yeah, you'll know. But for now, if you want to learn about in more specific ways of what I'm talking about, I have my pitch on the HeyCyrus.com. It That's HeyCyrus.com website is gonna lead you to the crowdfunding campaign, and I have a pitch there that explains more in
we'll
depth of what are
we'll
the
link
solutions
it. We'll
are.
link it in the description down below.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if anybody's like a pet parent that's like interested in more sustainable pet parenthood, this is for you. Like, I created this for us, for pet parents like me who care about the planet, but also care about the people behind the products that we are consuming all the time, and making sure that they are also taken care of.
Mm.
that we think about them before we buy stuff. That's kind of my thing.
I know that you have another meeting you have to jump on to, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
Um, well, I'll just say that the last thing that kind of popped out of me from what you were saying is this global history of trade that has been wounded. I've never really thought about it in those terms, but yeah, it's we've been trading ever since we've been around as human
Yep.
beings. But it is the way that we have been trading in the past centuries that has become wounded and
Yeah.
and imbalanced in this huge
And it's
way.
hurting the planet, it's hurting other living beings, and it's been hurting each other for such a long time. And a lot of people are not interested in that improving. And that's the reality too. So it's like it takes some of us to actually start wanting to see something differently. Um, and I feel like a lot of people are turned off by trading in itself just because of all the trauma that is being attached to it. So the way and this is something that came to me in the past few years, it's like I feel like trading and exchanging, these acts of exchanging, whatever it might be, because right now we are in exchange, right? Which is beautiful. I feel like that's sacred, and what these systems of colonization, etc., capitalism, etc., have done is like desecrate. Is that the word I'm looking for? Desecrate.
Desecrated, yeah.
Desecrate. Just like
Hmm.
remove the sanctity of something that I feel like it's inherently it inherently can be pure, and it has the potential of being pure and divine.
Yeah,
So it's like, how do we go back to
to
bringing
that.
divinity back into that, right? And I do feel like it's possible with everything. It's possible.
Yeah. Mm, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you, Iberica, for taking this time. And yeah, I feel like I got to know you on a whole deeper level than I did before.
Yeah, same. I'm really excited to see your Pokemon evolution. And
And
thank you for
yours
taking the
too.
time to talking. And of course, your healing energy, I feel like it's present. You know what I mean? So thanks for being a part of my healing journey, even in this more indirect ways.
Absolutely.